Nobody Gets Out Alive. Nobody Gets Out Alive is a horror, mystery, and suspense film directed by Santiago Mangini and written by Fernanda Koppel and John Croker, based on the novel of the same name by English author Adam Neville, originally published in 2014. It was released on September 29, 2021. Plot: Amber, an illegal immigrant, moves from Mexico to Cleveland, Ohio, after the death of her mother. She supports herself with an illegal job and her savings. Unable to stay in a hotel anymore because they asked for her identification, she was forced to look for something cheaper. She finds a rundown boarding house run by Red, who requires the first month's rent to be paid in advance. After moving in, strange things begin to happen to her there and elsewhere. One night, she sees a man banging his head against the door, whom she later discovers to be Becker, Red's mentally disturbed brother. Some rooms in the house are filled with strange artifacts, including depictions of ritual sacrifices. Amber begins seeing ghostly figures around the house. Amber contacts a relative living in the US, who intends to help her get a better job, but he needs documentation proving her Texas origin. So Amber asks a coworker to help them obtain the fake documents, and she gives him her savings. But her colleague disappears with the money, and Amber is fired from her job when she demands the alleged scammer's personal information from her boss. At home, she asks Red for her deposit, but he tells her he can't return it right away and that she has to wait until the next day. But Amber doesn't want to stay there another night. And here, Amber apparently makes a mistake. She goes to get her money with Red and runs into Becker. Becker tells her that Red isn't there and to come back the next day when Red is home. Then Amber leaves the house. Frightened by supernatural visions, Amber runs away from the boarding house. Desperate for money and unable to receive help from her distant cousin, Beto, Amber is forced to call Red from a restaurant. This happens, in my opinion, because Amber is cornered by the waitress who tells a police officer about her and they stare at her, so out of nervousness she has no choice but to call Red to demand her money. Red promises to refund her deposit, but only if she returns to the house. When they arrive at the boarding house, the cash is not in her room as promised. Instead, Becker shows up and forces Amber to drink some wine. Red tells Amber that if only she had waited until the next day as they had agreed, but instead she went to find him and told Becker that she would get her deposit back, which makes Becker angry and can no longer help her. As soon as he leaves, she locks the door. A little while later, the two Romanian women who had also moved into the boarding house knocked on the door. They talked about their dreams about a stone box. Petra began to sing, which lulled Amber to sleep. Amber wakes up and Red and Becker grab the women and prepare to take them to the basement. She attacks Red to try to stop him, but Becker throws her against the wall. Beto comes looking for Amber. They deny that they know her, but Beto manages to see her coat on the floor. Amber sees him from a window and breaks the glass and asks for help, but Beto breaks in and goes to her room, but the door is locked, so Becker arrives and takes Beto's life. Maybe Beto should have just called the police and waited outside for them to arrive. After Becker leads one of the women downstairs, Red tells Amber that his father was an archaeologist who brought back a stone box from his trip to Mexico in 1963. Red's father, along with his mother, Mary, trapped and murdered women. After his father was killed for sacrificing his mother, Red wanted to leave, but Becker insisted on staying, as each woman sacrificed to the stone box improved Becker's health. Becker returns and takes a screaming Amber to the basement, where he sees the other woman has been decapitated. He ties Amber to a stone slab in front of an altar where the box is located, opens it, and leaves the room, closing the door behind him. Amber continues screaming, and Beto bursts into the room and unties her. As they attempt to escape from the basement, Amber finds herself trapped in a dream in which her mother is on her deathbed. At the same time, a large moth-like creature slowly emerges from the box and takes Amber's head in its hands. In the dream, Amber's mother begs her to stay and begins to strangle her. However, Amber fights back and suffocates her mother. This causes the monster, the Aztec goddess Itzpapalotl, god of paradise made possible through sacrifice, associated with the moth seen throughout the film, to retreat back into the box. Amber emerges from the dream state and finds herself alone beside the altar. Amber overhears Becker and Red preparing Petra for the sacrifice. Becker notices that her wounds aren't healing and says something is wrong. Amber takes a macuahuitl from the study and goes upstairs, where she injures Red and is then attacked by Becker. Petra tries to help but is thrown off the balcony and killed. Becker strangles Amber, but she severs his carotid artery with an obsidian blade from the macuahuitl and then smashes his head in. She hears Red, wounded but alive, dragging his feet in the next room. She takes him downstairs, ties him to the stone table, and watches as the monster bites his head off. As she walks through the house, she passes Red, who has become a ghost like the other sacrificed women. As she starts to leave the house, her ankle, which Becker broke earlier, suddenly heals as a result of sacrificing Red to the monster. He stops and reaches out to let a moth land on it, then turns toward the basement door, showing the same dark, throbbing veins Becker had. Comments. The creature in Amber's visions is a gigantic moth-slash-spider hybrid, with long arms, human hands, and a false face that hides its toothy mouth. Interestingly, no one gets out alive implies that the monster only consumes willing sacrifices. When Amber refuses to accept the visions the monster induces, the beast returns to its mysterious box and no longer poses a threat to her. Although Amber manages to save both brothers, she breaks her ankle. However, after feeding the monster, offering a sacrifice to the beast seems to have a miraculous regenerative effect, as her broken foot heals instantly. The horror film's twist ending sees Amber look down into the basement, with the implication that she can now begin sacrificing innocent victims to the monstrous being in exchange for this ability. The fact that her broken foot healed instantly could imply that Amber could continue sacrificing humans to the monster in exchange for any gifts she offered Becker. The film's ending explains that the movie is a commentary on the cycle of cheap labor exploitation. Red and Becker feed the monster young women for personal gain, just as Amber's coworker preys on her desperation and dreams of a better life. The monster itself provides its victims with a comforting memory that helps them die. The film sheds a harsh light on the reality of how young immigrants are exploited and abused through the prism of a surreal horror story. Memories of her mother didn't force Amber to submit to death. Instead, Amber truly wanted to live. Like many people who come to the country in search of a new opportunity, she will fight for her future. When the monster realizes that Amber will sacrifice anything to live, he sees this strength and, as a result, allows her to live. The ending of Nobody Gets Out Alive explains that the monster made the right decision. Amber not only did what she needed to live, but she was also willing to sacrifice the men who tried to kill her. When she took Red to the basement and sacrificed him to the monster, she proved that she could serve this monster like the men who came before her. The moths, including the one Amber finds at the end, represent the trapped souls of the monster's previous victims. The images of hands are associated with the care required to prepare victims.